This is a Marketing for Learning podcast, the only podcast in the world that's guaranteed to increase your knowledge, skills, and capabilities when it comes to marketing for learning. Plus, there's a gratuitous amount of pineapples. You're welcome.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Marketing for Learning podcast. It's Hannah here with you today, and I'm coming to you straight off the back of the World of Learning exhibition and conference that happened in Birmingham this week. And firstly, what an incredible 2 days. It was so lovely to see so many of you. It was so lovely that so many of you came over and told me how much you loved the podcast. You saw my reaction. I get very shy. I forget that people listen to this. It just feels like my ramblings. So thank you so much for coming over. Thank you to everybody that I saw in the Marketing Advice Surgery. It was so wonderful to see so many of you. But what I want to talk to you about today is actually a question that I got asked at the end of my conference session. So my conference session was all about creating marketing for learning campaigns and why campaigns are so important for learning and development. And at the end of the session, I had a lovely lady come over who works for a fostering organisation. And she asked me whether the amount of marketing we do and the length of time that we do it for changes depending on the audience size. And I don't think she's the first person to think this. I think perhaps a lot of people that listen to this podcast might be thinking, my audience isn't that big. I don't need to worry about doing a full campaign. I don't need to worry about making sure I hit the rule of 7. I don't need to worry about making sure I'm doing it for at least 3 months. And I just want to talk about why it doesn't matter what your audience size is. Marketing for learning can definitely still help you, but you definitely shouldn't be cutting corners. Okay, I'm going to chunk this podcast into 3 sections for the 3 things that I hear smaller businesses tell me they don't need to do most often. And that is research, developing personas, and creating campaigns. So let's start with research. No matter your audience size, unless you're working in a team of 10 people, it is going to be impossible for you to really deeply know each and every employee. And to do really effective marketing, you really need to know your audience. You need to know what gets them out of bed in the morning. You need to know what they're struggling with at work. You need to understand their wants, their needs, and their pain points. Not just for the sake of developing personas or for doing marketing even, but for your learning design, for your learning strategies, for making sure you're aligning the business goals with your audience's desires. You really need to know your audience, and there's no better way of doing that than talking to people. Getting in front of them, having a chat with them. There's no quick fix. There's no easy way to do it. You can send out surveys, that makes it a little bit faster, but you still need to read through the responses and make sure that you're understanding what people are telling you. But when you work for a small business, let's say you've got 1,000 employees or maybe 2,000, it's a lot easier for you to get a much larger percentage share of your audience to come along to these focus groups and talk to you. And perhaps you do have a little bit more understanding of the entire lay of the land of your organisation. So why cut the corner that's really going to help you accelerate your marketing efforts and accelerate your learning efforts for the sake of not wanting to do 20 focus groups? When you say 20 hours, that feels like a lot. It's almost a working week. But let's say you did 5 meetings a week for 4 weeks. You've then, in 4 weeks, got a real deep understanding of what's going on in your audience's minds. What's going on? Why aren't they getting involved with learning? They'll probably tell you time, but you've got to dig a bit deeper and you'll get a better answer than time, I promise. Don't cut this corner. It baffles me. Honestly, I'm struggling to think of what to say to you guys because I don't understand why we'd cut this corner when actually it's easier to do it in a small organisation. So if you're in a small business or a smaller business and thinking, oh, I don't need to do that, I know my audience, I challenge you to do some market research. I challenge you. This is a dare. I double dare you to go and do that research and see if your assumptions are true. They might well be, but I guess they're probably not. The second thing that people like to skip because they don't think it's necessary is personas. And it does go hand in hand with market research, because the reason people like to skip personas often is because they don't want to do the research. So everything I've just said about market research applies here. But another reason people don't want to do personas is genuinely because I don't think people really understand why they're so valuable. And the example I gave in my conference session at World of Learning was comparing a Vision Express advert that said, book your eye test for free today, and Specsavers' latest campaign. If you haven't seen it, give Specsavers' campaign a Google. It's their contact lens campaign. And it's all about having a kiss when you're both wearing glasses and how awkward that is and how your glasses will smash together and it's just a pain in the butt. And it's a brilliant advert. And the reason it's a brilliant advert is because it really understands what's in it for the target audience. They could have just said, come and try contact lenses for free, money back guaranteed. If I wasn't interested or didn't think about why I wanted contacts, that wouldn't get my butt moving. But the whole glasses smashing, I get it. It made me giggle. It's a brilliant advert and it answers the what's in it for me. Without understanding their personas, Specsavers would have struggled to create that advert. And yes, it's a bit simpler when you're Specsavers and you're thinking about glasses. It is a bit simpler. Maybe everyone that wears glasses isn't in a relationship and doesn't want to be kissing anyone. So they are targeting a persona. They are targeting a segment of their target audience. But another reason I think people avoid personas is because they don't believe that they can truly be based on data, based on research. I think people struggle to realise that as much as you're adding excitement and character to your personas through assumptions, they are very, very, very grounded in data. And that's why you need to do the research piece. I spoke to somebody that said to me, well, if I create personas, nobody else can use them because they're my assumptions. No, you're doing your personas wrong if they're based wholly on assumptions. Personas should be able to be picked up by anybody in your organisation to target your target audience. They are a semi-fictional representation of who your target audience is. That doesn't change based on who's talking to them. They are still that same audience. So I think it's really important that if you're worrying and doubting about the efficacy of doing personas, read our ebook, listen to the podcast. I promise you, I genuinely believe personas are the most impactful thing you can do for your marketing efforts and your learning efforts, if I'm honest. So please, I don't care if you're in a team of 500 people. Think about personas. Think about how you can get to know your audience better and make it easier for yourself. But again, I'm going to say something people don't like, and I've said this a few times on the podcast, and I say it all the time in my training courses. You can only have 4 or 5 personas. I don't care how many people are in your organisation. I don't care how big your audience is. 4 or 5 personas, that's the limit. And someone come up to me and say, oh, well, I've got 20,000 people. I can't bucket that into 4 or 5 people. Again, plugging Capgemini a lot in this podcast. I don't mean to. Capgemini have 340,000 people. We've got that into 4 personas. It works. You can do it. And if you need a little bit more help and guidance on creating personas for your smaller business, drop me a message, because I genuinely believe it will be the biggest game changer for you. And lastly, campaigns. Smaller businesses think they don't need to run campaigns because they're a smaller business. So people just know, right? They just know what's going on. And wrong. That's really, really wrong. I've seen teams that don't know what each other are doing. And that's teams of like 10 people. You cannot assume just because you're in a smaller business that people know what's happening. You still have to market your offering. And I suppose a big part of that comes from, even if they do know what's happening, do they know what's in it for them? And I doubt that unless you're marketing it. So don't assume just because you're a smaller business that you don't need to tell people about what you're doing, and you don't need to get them hooked. You don't need to get them involved and engaged and excited. You're a smaller business. That doesn't mean learning and development is any less valuable to your business, to your people, to the business bottom line. You still need to evoke performance change like the people that are working in L&D in huge organisations. It makes no difference of how many people you're talking to. You still need to get them hooked. So make sure as a small business, you're not cutting yourself short. You're not saying, oh, I'm in a small business, I don't need to do this. Because you still have the same engagement problems, just with fewer people. You still have the same awareness problems, just with fewer people. So don't assume that you can't do this stuff. Don't assume that you shouldn't be doing this stuff. Give it a go. Try it. Test it. Don't cut yourself or your audience short. So I feel like maybe, if I'm being honest with you all, this podcast is a little bit of me getting on my soapbox, and it's a little bit of frustration. Because I have had a few conversations over the last few days of, how do I do this for my small business or smaller business? And my simple answer is exactly as you would if you were a larger business. I believe if you've got an L&D team, you need to be thinking about marketing. It's really as simple as that. You need to be doing marketing and integrated marketing thinking into your L&D function. No matter your audience size, no matter your team size, there is a real lack of understanding about why learning is important across society. People have branded us as compliance training, if I'm honest. I have not spoken to a single person explaining what I do for the first time, and they haven't rolled their eyes and gone, oh, but that's boring. It's e-learning courses. I just click next and try to get to the end as quick as possible. We've been tarred with a really bad brush for a really, really long time. And we've got to change that. And the only way we can change perceptions, the only way we can boost awareness, the only way we can truly overcome our engagement problems is with marketing. So I'm going to kind of end this podcast in saying, I don't care how big your audience is. I don't care how big your organisation is. You've got to be doing marketing for learning. And everything we've put out over the last 5 years, we turn 5 next week, which is insane. Every single thing we've put out over the last 5 years is as relevant to small businesses as it is to humongous organisations. Just do it, to steal Nike's phrase. If you are in a smaller organisation or a bigger organisation, any kind of organisation, and you are struggling with seeing how you can do marketing for learning in your business, please do get in touch. I've Had a lot of conversations over the last few days. And I love talking to you guys. You know, that's like my favourite part of this job, is talking to people. So please get in touch, because every person that came up to me with the mindset of I can't do this because I'm in a small business walked away with a lot of actionable points of why they absolutely can and how they absolutely can. So there you go. I'll jump off my soapbox now. I will leave you to have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you next Friday on the Marketing for Learning podcast. See you later, guys.